We are on our way down to take a look at a 10 kilowatt fiber laser with an exchange table and a tube cutter rig. The way we kind of got into this is we were having our laser welder set up, and the owner was there, and he mentioned he had this thing this machine being set up, and asked if we wanted to do a little video on it, and I was like, yeah, wouldn't want to see a 10 kilowatt fiber laser. I mean, where do you go to see that? So apparently down to South Florida. So we're on our way. It's about a 3-hour drive for us each way. So, but it'll be fun. We'll get probably be there a couple hours and get some video of the thing cutting different material, and I'll get some specifications, the overall length, the width, the loading areas, you know, those details that they don't share on the website. So we'll get that data on it, and we can see if it'll fit in your shop. Of course, it's a machine's quite expensive at about right around $500,000 right now. So an expensive piece of hardware, but if you have a need for it, that $500,000 goes by very quickly versus any of the available methods of cutting the material it can cut. So we'll show you when we get there.
We are out in front of Palma Metals. They're installing their 10 kilowatt laser. So let's go take a look and see what they have.
Palma Metals is a Florida-based company. If you've ever been to any of the major theme parks in Orlando, you've probably leaned on one of their products. They primarily manufacture railing systems as well as architectural components for buildings.
So now we're over at the front of the machine. A few differences you'll notice. This machine uses a program called HypeCut. It's their higher output machines will all be running HypeCut. It comes with 2 remotes. This one's for plate, this one's for tube. The doors here are not big enough for loading full-size material, but you could load small plates, and for doing maintenance and adjustment on the head, and for nozzle replacement that you'll need to do fairly often whenever you change thicknesses. Over here is the door for the tube cutter. It allows for oversized components to extend out the front, and I believe it's also for loading. So here we are on the side of the machine at the tube cutter area. This tube cutter has a maximum length of 6 meters, just short of 20 feet. You could extend out the front if you didn't need the end trimmed with the laser. The parts can extend out the front, so if they're over the length of the inside of the machine, they can extend out simply and then be cut off and caught. The max size on this is a 200 millimeter, which is just short of 8 inches. They do have an option for 300 millimeter, but that has to be purchased from the factory. The other thing is there are a couple of supports in the base of the tube cutting area. This is to support long, round objects so that they don't bow.
The bright purple light you see in the right side camera view is not in the visible light spectrum. What you're seeing is scattered from the otherwise invisible 1.07 UM range. This is one of the reasons I prefer enclosed machines like this one. The light can be harmful without rated laser safety eyewear in the correct range and is not visible. The only light you see while the machine is operating are particles being ignited by the beam. Rated laser goggles are useful, but an enclosed machine is best practice as it helps contain the beam, sparks, and fumes away from workers. The piece being cut is between about 5/16 and 3/8 aluminum. I did see some sample parts that had been cut that were 3/4 inch thick. The edge quality on this component is very good, both in the holes and the straight cuts. You could detect a little bit of a burr with a fingernail, but otherwise is very clean and would take minimal cleanup effort to make a final component.
We're to the back of the machine now. Here is the exchange table area. There are 2 tables. This is the lower one. There is another one that is above this. So you would load your material here, and the machine can be cutting while you're unloading and reloading plates, and then they switch and you can start cutting on your other sheet right away. The table is about 7.5 feet by 13.5 feet, which works out to 2 meters by 4 meters long.
Okay. Yeah, it's chain driven together.
Oh, that's clever. That's clever. One goes out, one comes in.
slows down when it's near the end.
Here's a piece of 1x4 of what appears to be hot rolled steel. I've heard from others that hot rolled is not as easy to cut due to mill scale. I almost admitted this, but I thought it was a good illustration of the setup process. Each type of material needs to be set up by cutting samples and making adjustments. I do know from experience that as you approach the maximum capacity of a cutting machine, that piercing and cutting become more difficult. This machine has plenty of power to cut this piece. It's just a case of needing to fine-tune the cut parameters. Here is the second cut with the adjusted settings. They decided to enter the cut from the side. This cut is significantly cleaner. I would imagine another couple test cuts making adjustments would have the part dropping clean and eliminating any slag on the back. We were running short on time for recording, so this is all I have for cutting videos. The test piece being cut is a 2" by 2" square with a small corner radius, and is being cut at a rate of 13 inches per minute. Here you can see the back side of the part. As you can see, the edge quality is nearly perfect without any post-cutting cleanup. This can greatly reduce labor costs as many parts don't require any cleanup at all. One big improvement that this machine has over smaller, less advanced machines is that the gas type, pressure, and focus are all automated, which allows for less skilled operators to run production volumes of parts or one-offs. Once the material type and thickness have been programmed, all they need to do is open the program, install the appropriate nozzle for the selected material, and begin cutting. Here is a 3D drawing of the machine installation based on measurements taken at the facility. All sizes are in inches only. The areas in yellow are what I would suggest for loading zones and maintenance areas. The air compressor is red because that's its paint color. I suspect that if the company opts to use a forklift for loading from that side, that they will be relocating the compressor. The rest of the smaller modules on the back of the machine are approximate sizes, but allowing 67 inches on the long side of the machine seems adequate. I do want to mention for the next few video clips showing the modules that cable and hose management is a bit of a difficult task on these machines, because this is not a single machine, but about 9 machines connected together to do one process. If you're looking for cable management solutions, bolt-down raceways between the machines, overhead electrical supply via conduit, or cable protector ramps could be simple and expensive solutions.
Alright, we're standing in front of the control cabinet. This is for our 10 kilowatt unit. As you can see, it's very neat and clean, very well put together. There's nothing loose, there's nothing that looks junky or not intentional. These are the big Y-axis controls. These move the gantry. There are 2 of them because the gantry is powered from both sides, so that way you don't get twists in the gantry. It's absolutely necessary in these big machines. Moving down, you got the X-axis, that's the cross slide on the gantry. Then there's 2 rotational axes for the tube cutter that, because it has a 4-jaw chuck and I believe a carrier that match rotational direction and speed. Then we have another Y-axis. I believe that this is actually, and then the little one down there is the Z-axis because the head doesn't weigh very much. Overall, it looks very nicely put together. It's very neat and clean. So I was going to go ask Shuming if it was okay for me to open the door to show the inside of it. And then I realized that they put in English, very big, do not open the door. So I'm going to say, no, don't open the door. So if you've seen my videos about my machine, my water chiller only comes up to about here. This one obviously is way bigger. The hoses out of it are about this big around, and for the chilling of the laser resonator and for the head. We're going to take pictures of the data plates to show you, but there's a lot more control options and a lot more things that you can watch. You got a low temperature pump, high temperature pump, they're separate. And we also, I believe these are for the refrigerant. It's the high and low pressure, or there's two different sides of the system. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but you can just see how big this one is in comparison to one you might be used to on a smaller machine. So now we're down to the three-phase power regulator, voltage regulator. What this is doing is there's actually two transformers. There's a transformer over by the wall that takes our American 480 volt, which is actually closer to 490, brings it down to about 380, and then this does the final cleanup to make sure that the power is stable for the laser resonator and for the other electronics that are on the machine. So here is the compressor that they are running this on. This is another one from Bezgutter. You can buy it directly from them. So this is a complete unit. This includes the chillers and filters needed for laser cutting. I do have a video if you're running a smaller unit, you can get away with cheaper. But if you're running a bigger unit, like this 10 kilowatt laser, this is more the compressor you want to get. Its output pressure is 1.6 MPa, which is 232 psi, and its output capacity is 2.1 cubic meters per minute, which I believe is 75 cubic feet per minute, and it's a 22 kilowatt or about a 30 horsepower compressor. Pretty much it's a complete unit, as the chiller built in here, filters are behind it. This looks like about an 80-gallon tank. I'm not 100% sure. But that is what it appears to be. So I'm standing right next to the compressor, and it's building pressure up right now, and you can probably hear me just fine over the compressor. It's not loud. Spoke a little too soon. It's not as loud as a conventional compressor, yet this one's operating at much higher pressure. This is already at 1.48. I think it's going to shut off at 1.6 MPa, which is about 232 psi. It's a higher pressure unit than what you can get at a big box store or at it's higher pressure than a conventional compressor.